Welcome to the Make Me Whole podcast. I'm your host, Josette Rosado, and it's time to talk getting past what's difficult, trusting our own abilities to do more, and keeping it that way. You know, I've been a mom for almost 20 years, and since day one, my greatest fear really has been how I'm going to mess up these kids. I've been given the blessing of two beautiful girls, which terrified me more because I also grew up in a house full of girls, and I know how emotionally charged things can get with girls. I just have this fear that I was just going to screw it completely up. Where did that fear come from, though? Did I have trauma? Did I lack the emotional support that everyone thought they deserved? That would have molded my sense of self and created an opportunity for me to be more secure as a mother to my girls? Well, not necessarily. See, I had my grandmothers and my mom in my early life, which meant I got to experience unconditional, semi-conditional, and conditional love all at the same time. Very confusing, I know. I had one grandmother who loved me without limits or conditions, who defended me at a moment's notice and spoke on my behalf whenever I needed her to. My other grandmother would give me the world on a platter, but only if I gave her my love and attention, while she managed her jealousy if I put another adult family member before her. She also defended me, oftentimes just to piss my mom off. And then there was the conditional love. The one that we're talking about today. The one that I've come to realize my mom was only capable of. What happens if your mom wasn't there for you emotionally? Well, according to some researchers, the event of the mother wound takes place. So who experiences it? Well, children, especially daughters. When a mom provided support by taking care of physical needs of their kids, but didn't give that unconditional love or care or really security. You know, when they couldn't understand our emotions and help us manage them, when we weren't allowed to express our emotions and found our mothers to be especially critical. Sometimes the child is expected to take care of themselves physically and emotionally. Mom isn't available because they had to work or because they were busy with their own interests. Now, this isn't to say that a working mother can't do what they need to without instilling a mother wound. Let me be clear. But when we're talking about the mother wound, we look at the mother and whether or not they might have suffered emotionally or physically themselves. When they didn't get a chance to process their own trauma, it led to them being unable to offer love or nurture. Maybe they were dealing with an untreated mental health condition or experienced alcohol or drug addiction. Now, I know that the mother wound can't be found as a mental health diagnosis, even though I think it should be. Who knows, one day maybe, right? More researchers have found that while this can happen with mother and sons, it's more typical with mother and daughters. Since moms are in charge of helping us navigate those meters of trust when it comes to other people, what happens to us when we're kids definitely affects our future relationships. Also, and where I personally always have worried, is that a child who's hit with the mother wound is more likely to bring that type of relationship with their own children, creating a generational crisis. Latinos usually live in a highly patriarchal society, and it's easier for mothers to share their own mother wound with their daughters. Women who might have believed that stereotype of being a second-class citizen is inevitably going to pass that belief on to their daughters. Daughters then find themselves facing the dilemma of accepting what their mother believed so as to keep things peaceful and get along, or fighting for their own beliefs and being considered as a rebel while they aimed for their own empowerment. Part of the pain of my own upbringing was that I was always fighting the fight. I didn't believe that I couldn't do certain things because I was a female or that it didn't appear as acceptable to those around me. My mom was also raised here in the States and wore her mini skirts, ironed her hair, and listened to rock and roll. I found this so hypocritical when I became a young woman and every single move was watched, commented on, often criticized, or unrecognized. It definitely wasn't easy. See, I had been told all too often that I needed to focus on school, get good grades, and when I decided to date, that I shouldn't get pregnant. And I knew it was the rule and that I needed to follow it, but no one ever explained to me why. I didn't hear what the rules were for the few boys in my family, but I knew that they had so many more freedoms than I did. It held me back from my own self-actualization and kept that mother wound festering without me knowing it. I mean, that's me. But if you're wondering what the mother wound might look like in your life, think back to your childhood and see if you've ever experienced these things. Was your mother not there for you emotionally? Were you scared or hesitated from turning to your mother for comfort or security? I personally didn't need that as I had my two grandmothers who covered that department. Did you doubt you had your mother's approval, so you were always trying to be perfect? Pause for that trigger, huh? I needed that moment because that was a big part of the development of my former people-pleasing self. Have you felt nervous or frightened around your mother? Did your mother expect you to take care of her physically or emotionally? This is where, they go into martyr mode and say things like, I know, just blame me for everything, followed by exasperation and almost always tears. Unfortunately, these negative experiences and emotions can lead to low self-esteem, where without our own beliefs in ourselves, we can struggle. And we don't get a sense of what we are capable of. We barely get a sense of what's important to us and what matters. This led to lack of emotional awareness where we weren't able to stop those negative feelings from coming or learn how to manage them because we were never able to talk about them. We never got our mother's support in naming them or any help on how to deal with them well. We've gained an inability to self-soothe since we didn't know how to manage our emotions as kids. We really never developed it. We often turn to things outside ourselves for comfort, including numbing practices like using alcohol and drugs. With relationship difficulties, see, when you have this mother wound, you have a hard time forming and keeping positive relationships because we never learned how to trust. Okay. Enough with what's going wrong. Because if you've identified either now or before now that you're dealing with the mother wound, you know what you're dealing with. So what can you do to heal? Well, first we have to go back to working on balancing and understanding of feelings such as anger, resentment, and recognize that we may need to forgive our mother. Yes, I said it. Forgive our mother. Why? Well, if you live in a state of unbalanced emotions, in this negative festering pool of needing to be justified or right, when it comes to it, in the long run, we actually leave no room for much else and really lose out. So first, we need to express the pain. It's allowing yourself to recognize that you are in pain, saying to yourself, you get that it exists. Usually, a good therapist can help the child inside to talk about the pain of being unloved, ignored, shunned, ridiculed, and even victimized. Journaling is also a really good way to process and acknowledge your pain. Love yourself. Yes, we've heard that before, but really? Yes, really. Our mother's involvement with us created our concept of ourselves. it's important to recognize that it was not our fault that our mothers were unable to build a positive self-image for us. When we do this and let go of that negative self-image, we have the ability to create something new. Since we didn't get our mother's feedback, we didn't have a way to create self-awareness. So our job now is to get in touch with what we feel, take the time to accept the feeling, name the feeling, and then we've completed the first steps to coping with it. It's okay to have feelings, y'all. It's how we react to them that we've got to get a hold of. Pretty much, we have to give ourselves all the things we never received as a child. And this self-care isn't spoiling ourselves, especially if you're thinking it's something you don't need to do or it's too much. It could be as easy as going outside of your house before going to work mode or taking intentional time to hang out with the people you enjoy and make you feel good about yourself. Forgiveness, well, that's a big one. When we get to know our feelings and give ourselves the space and power to grieve those things we never got when we were kids, it also gives us the space we need to move towards forgiving. See, you're no longer filling that space with pain and hurt, so you have room for so much more. I can tell you that mothering is super hard. All the mothers out there can absolutely agree with that, right? And mothers are not perfect. We get things wrong. Sometimes we mess it up big time. But if we can recognize who our mothers are instead of focusing on who we wish they would have been, we can move in the direction of understanding and accepting them. When we do that, maybe we can build a better relationship with them. You definitely have to be sure to create boundaries and accept that if it's not a perfect relationship, it could still be meaningful. And I have to be honest, in some cases, you may not be able to forgive. It happens and can stem from too much time passing, the level of trauma you've experienced, or just the realizations that things will only change on your part and not theirs. Difficult to deal with, of course, but it may be better to work through the pain with your own support network or your therapist. You can do this without extending that ever so expected olive branch. So, talking about the mother wound, what do we get from all of this? Well, I know it would be easier if we could blame everything that's gone wrong in our lives, the things we failed at, on our moms. But that's not entirely the truth. And we have the ability to choose how we deal with it, to choose how to feel and how to respond to those feelings. We can choose to work towards healing our own mother wound and make sure that we don't pass it down to our kids. I know that's my priority. I work hard every day to break this cycle with my own girls. But my focus is to continue to teach them how to empower themselves, feeding off the healing I've been able to achieve and creating room so they're never afraid to come to me when they need me most. Whew, I know that was a heavy topic, but ever so necessary to speak on. And for those of you who are dealing with the mother wound, just know you're not alone. Thank you so much for coming today and listening to the podcast. You can reach out and email me at makemewhole@bossesofbliss.com, on Facebook and Instagram at Bosses of Bliss, and on TikTok at Blissful Boss. Remember, complain less, do more, and I'll catch you on the next one.